Hi everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. It's been a while since I've had a friend come over and cook with me for an episode. Today we have Susan Spungen, cookbook author and food stylist, and I'm super excited to make a recipe from her book, Veg Forward.
We're gonna make my caramelized onion and potato galette.
Potatoes are one of my favorite foods.
Good.
And also caramelized onions, so I'm super excited. And also, can I brag for a second?
Yes.
We just dug up our potatoes in our garden, so I'm very excited to use these. Cal actually gave us the seed potatoes to grow these, so thanks, Cal.
And there's really nothing like a fresh dug potato. They really do taste different. They have more of that earthy flavor.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a lot of potato. The recipe only calls for 3 or 4 fingerlings, and the only reason I called for fingerlings is because the size looks cute.
Yeah.
But these are great.
Yeah, oh good, okay.
We're going to do a pretty classic pastry dough with some Parmesan in the dough, and I'm going to show you how to do my preferred method, which is using the food processor. I just find it's a quick way to cut through the butter and get it broken down so that you can then use your fingers to kind of flatten the pieces of dough for a really flaky but easy dough.
You had stuck this in the freezer. Just
I
for a little
did. I
bit.
put it in the freezer.
To keep it
Especially
cold.
because this is cut maybe just a little smaller than I normally cut it.
Okay.
I sometimes start with bigger chunks because of the food processor.
Yeah.
Because then it just gives it a chance to kind of like cut through it without making the pieces too small. And then we've got caramelized onions. A lot of people have different opinions about caramelizing onions, but I'm going to show you how to do it the way I like to do it. Got goat cheese on the bottom, and then you put the layer of caramelized onions and then the Gruyère cheese, and you bake it, and it smells like heaven.
So for the pastry, we have all-purpose flour.
Yeah.
A little bit of sugar, kosher salt, the parm, and also there's a little pepper in the dough.
Yeah.
For the onions, we have Spanish onions, butter, a little olive oil,
Yeah.
salt. Oh, also a little bit of,
yeah.
this is dry sherry.
Oh yeah, sherry,
which is an optional ingredient.
Cognac, brandy, and the onions. It just adds more flavor, and it just makes it really savory and
Yeah,
good.
I love it. It makes me think of the French onion soup that my mom used to always make, which had a lot of sherry in it.
Exactly. This
So
is
good.
kind of like French onion soup in a tart.
Right, with the Gruyère and everything.
Yeah, that's what the flavors evoke.
Special equipment, pretty minimal besides the food processor.
And honestly, if you don't have a food processor, you can do this by hand, absolutely, in the classic way. Saute pan for the onions.
Rolling pin and like a sheet tray.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things ever, and I don't get to do it that often, is when someone else teaches me their pastry technique. Because I think it's fascinating. Because everyone has a different way of doing it. And like the differences can be super subtle.
Yeah.
But I always learn something.
I usually I'm lazy. I cut them into like tablespoon sized chunks.
Oh, okay.
But this
so maybe we process it less.
Fine. Yeah, you could.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll process it a little less. We're going to throw in the flour.
Okay. This is like, I think this is a cup and a half.
Yeah, cup and a half. And then a little bit of sugar, which if you don't eat sugar, you can leave it out. But I just like the way the dough tastes with a little bit of sugar.
Yeah, and just for browning too.
Yeah, a little bit of salt. So then we've got grated parm.
This is about an ounce.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you really should weigh grated parm because the grater that you use makes a huge difference in the volume.
Yeah, like this. So this was microplane, so it's like super fluffy.
Right, it's fluffy. So actually in my book, I think I call it a half a fluffy cup because I use a microplane.
Yeah.
And I just want people to understand that a fluffy cup, if you use the side of a box grater with those small holes, it's way denser and heavier. So it's always a good idea. I mean, you can never really have too much Parmesan in something, so it's okay.
It's one of the hard things to think about recipe development because it's like grated parm could mean so many different things. And it could mean the stuff from the store, which like I buy, but that is like pebbly and dense.
Yes,
you know,
completely different way.
A couple cracks of pepper.
Some
I think it was
pepper.
like quarter teaspoon or something.
It doesn't matter. I don't measure pepper usually. I just say a few turns of the pepper mill. So now we're just going to buzz those things together just to combine them.
Now
plug in the food processor.
Plug it in.
So just pulse it a couple times just to mix all that together. Then we're going to open it up again. Sometimes wait for the dust to settle a little. Throw in the butter.
Okay.
And we're just going to pulse. Always pulse when you're doing this.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, so good. Okay.
And listen to the thump. Well, it's not thumping that much, but you can hear it. There's a
I
slight
can hear
difference. Yeah. And I think I say in my recipe until they're between like the size of quarters and nickels, because I kind of hate sometimes the like walnuts. It's like, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like, you mean in the shell or not in the shell? Or?
Sometimes I'm writing a recipe and I ask Harris, I'm like, Harris, what's this size? Like, give me another, you know what I mean?
And I like to
usually
give
you
a
see
range.
like pea size is like a common one.
So actually that's good. We're just going to throw that in the bowl. What you want to do is run your hands through it and just flatten the bigger ones through your fingers.
And it's still nice and cold.
Yeah, and that's essential. Like, I mean, what we did is what you should do at home. You should cut up your butter, then put it back in the fridge or freezer so that it's really cold, especially if it's warm out. Flattening the layers, you're getting more of the principle of a puff pastry, where you're trying to create layers of butter in between the dough.
Yeah, this is sort of a step that you don't see much in food processor recipes. It just tells you to right straight add the water.
Exactly.
But I like the flattening because you don't get the flattening effect. The food processor does it like in 3 dimensions.
Exactly.
You know?
And then it gets like pebbly, and actually it still makes a flaky pastry, but I think it just comes out flakier like this.
Yeah, so here
great.
you want those
so
kind of
then,
sheets.
then you just search through to see if there's any big ones. That's what I always do, because you don't want a big chunk of butter, because especially with a galette, it'll just melt and run out of the galette. So it's really important to have the right size butter pieces. Looks pretty good.
Okay.
How about if I help you
I'll stir.
Stream in the water? So I find that for 2 cups of flour, it's usually just a little more than a 1/4 cup. It's like 4 to 5 tablespoons. So I usually just, overfill that a little bit. What you're going to do is just lightly stir with the fork while we add the water. So this way we're not breaking the butter down anymore. If it was still in the food processor, the butter would continue to get into smaller pieces, and that's what I'm trying to avoid by doing this. What you want is just enough water to hold it together. Too much water will toughen the dough.
Right.
So
and it hydrates as it sits.
It hydrates as
so it's going to look dry.
Exactly. So as long as you can kind of squish it together, so we're going to give it the squish test.
Okay.
I think it's better to go a tiny bit more if you're unsure.
Yeah.
Because not enough, it's going to be just really crumbly. And sometimes I even use a spray bottle at this point.
But this feels good.
We're going to put it into a circle. We're only making 1 galette, so this is enough dough for 1. If this was a double batch of dough, you'd want to divide it into 2 piles so that you're starting off with a circle when you're rolling. So
Sorry, there's a bend.
A bit of wind there.
Should I bring it together in the bowl first and then
bring
transfer
it together in the bowl, because then you can tell if it still needs a little bit more water, but if it looks a little bit dry, it's okay, it will hydrate.
One thing I'll do sometimes is like bring it together and transfer it.
Absolutely.
And then if there's lots of dry bits left in the bowl, you can just add like a drop of water to bring that together too.
You could do that. What you don't want is to be so dry that when you try to roll it out, it starts crumbling.
Cracking, It looks dry, but when it sits in the fridge.
You can tell that this is going to hydrate.
Yeah.
It would feel a lot more crumbly. And it's actually okay if right now the butter feels soft, because we're going to chill it. As long as you're not messing up the structure. Sorry, I'm taking over.
No, that's good.
So this is what I do to make sure the edges are nice and compact and not too raggedy to start. I can tell this is going to be fine. Like, it feels loose now. Like, you might go, I don't know, because it looks kind of crackly. But once it chills and hydrates, ideally a couple hours or overnight.
Yeah.
First thing is, I always look for like baseball to softball size onions. And part of the reason is just less work, okay? If you have a lot of onions like this, there's just more peeling, more slicing. So for caramelizing onions, I always go for the really big ones. I'll do the first one. And then I probably usually cut them in half first and peel them. It depends. If they're hard to peel, then it's easier when they're in halves. When you get to this root, I like to take it off, but just leave a little bit of that end there, so it kind of holds together. And then I do what's called a rotary cut. That just means that instead of we're not just cutting the onion like this, we're just going to cut it into like tiny little wedges. And this is the shape that I think works the nicest for caramelized onions, and I'm probably cutting these a tiny bit thinner than what the recipe says. So that's what we're
But leaving the root intact, so they hold together. Yeah,
which
so
I like. You get little. I mean, it's nothing unpleasant to eat because you've cut off the root. Yeah, it softens, so it looks pretty on the tart, and also it gives you a little handy guide.
Right.
So I'm just going to get these ready for you while you slice. Lefty.
I'm a lefty. That's why I had to be on this side.
Right. That works out really well, actually. So I'm going to cut this one in half.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the book, the recipe, and when we had dinner probably sometime last winter, and I was talking to you because I think one of the most incredible things is that you photographed the book yourself.
I did. I just kind of wanted to do it, and it's a book about highly seasonal vegetables. So And where I live, there are tons and tons of farm stands, and I wanted to be able to capture the beauty of the produce when it was in season. So I didn't want to like wait until like January for a shoot and then try to get gorgeous stuff that you'd find in the summer. So if I came home with a beautiful heirloom tomato, I wanted to shoot it right then and there. So I had like a permanent studio set up in my house, and I would just shoot whenever, you know, as I went along with the recipes. Didn't always work out the first time. I often had to go back, but that was also a really great thing about it, because I think you know from having done a couple of books, you're not always satisfied with the way something comes out, right?
Right, and you don't have time to go back.
You don't have time to go back, but when you shoot it by yourself, you can have as many do-overs as you want.
Right.
So this is the Galette right here, and I think I got this one on the first try. I mean, Galettes are kind of pretty photogenic. This was one that I really liked, this rhubarb Galette.
So beautiful.
A summer version. This I knew would be the cover when I did it. I shot this heirloom tomato tart. I mean, everything's sort of a tart that I've showed you so far. But there is more than tarts. And then that ended up being the blow up of the cover. And I had to fight to get these spreads in the book because they just didn't have the page count. These are the things. If you're an aspiring cookbook author, make sure to check your page count when you get your contract. Oh yeah, this is a really good one.
I've never done that.
So I had to fight to get these. Oh, really? You never had to. You got lots of pages.
Well, I think it's mostly that they were asking for more recipes than I was actually able to give them. And so then it was like, oh, we made it back a little bit.
Yeah, but boy,
well, they were just like flexible.
Yeah, you learn so much every time you do a book, don't you?
Yes. Oh my God.
Maybe you learn not to ever do one again. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
I mean,
it's a great experience.
You're not wrong. It's a lot. So all the onions are now cut.
So this pan is just a tiny bit small, but it's fine. You just cook it longer.
Right, it calls for like a 12-inch, which this is
like
not
a 12-inch saute with the sloped sides would be your ideal.
Yeah, more surface area.
I mean, actually, they call this a skillet. This is technically a saute. Whoa.
I know.
This is technically a saute pan, I believe, with the straight sides.
Yes.
But we always use those terms kind of interchangeably. Saute, skillet, frying pan.
I've always learned skillet as recipe language, and Harrison thinks that it's weird.
No, I use skillet to imply the slope-sided, because a lot of people will say saute pan, but this technically, if you look on Maiden's website, will probably say saute.
Right.
So what we're going to do is a tablespoon of, I usually do the oil first, because then I melt the butter in the oil. Yeah.
So about a tablespoon of oil.
Does it really make any difference? I don't know. Yeah, about a tablespoon. That's good. That's good.
This is on medium-high.
And then a tablespoon of butter.
I do like the combo.
I like a combo because oil can take a higher heat. Butter adds flavor and browning. So I just do a combo for things like this. So
are you ready for the onion steam bath?
Yeah, we're ready for the. Oh yeah.
So we're gonna. Do you want to do some and then add the rest?
Well, or we could just cook a smaller batch just because it'll be more evident what we're doing here.
Okay.
Maybe don't put them all in because our pan is a little bit tight.
3/4 teaspoon kosher.
Yeah, you don't want to put too much salt. You could always taste them later, but that seems to be enough. So we're going to give it a little bit of a stir now just to coat everything with the butter and the oil, but we're not going to stir a lot. That's one of the things with caramelized onions. You want to stir less than you might think. Okay. I always have to tell my husband when I'm cooking, don't stir them. I'm trying to not stir it because he likes to come along and give it a good old
People do like to move pans around.
They do. They do. You can even go to high. Don't do medium because what we're trying to do is really get a lot of color on the onions in the beginning. We're trying to almost burn them.
Yeah.
Not burn them, but almost burn them.
I feel like based on the sound, you could turn it up.
Yeah, go ahead. Again, we're using all our senses to cook. The beginning is where you want a lot of heat. You can always moderate it later. If you start caramelized onions too low, they're just going to, or at least for this method, it'll just take too long to get color. So I started high so we can get a lot of browning, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add some liquid, some water, and some sherry to this to kind of deglaze the onions, really, and the pan. Kind of rinse off all of that good brown stuff, and then it kind of makes everything, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like blend together and turn the same color. Like
homogeneous color, the color. And it picks up everything off the bottom of the skillet.
Yes, we're getting the onions.
Yeah, at least there's like a draft that's sending it over there a little bit. Sorry.
See, you're tempted to stir, but I think we should wait. And can it go up a little higher?
Yeah, it's just making its way up. It's set,
So you don't really want to stir it at all until you're seeing like browning on the other side. So instead of like really stirring it, you can just sort of check, but nothing's really happening yet.
Right. Okay.
And as they break down and they're deflating, you know, they're wilting, right?
Yeah.
You can sort of push them down to make a little more contact.
As far as the liquid that we're going to add, so we have a little bit of water.
Right.
And then this is sherry, which is optional, but we talked about how it just adds a nice flavor.
And you could use cognac, brandy, whatever you have in that. Are those called fortified wines?
Would you do like a white wine, or is that too acidic?
You could. No, you could use white wine. I just really love the flavor of like a sherry, Madeira, cognac. It just gives it that yummy special flavor.
Yeah.
Now you might want to turn it down so it doesn't actually burn. But this is good. This is what we want.
Yeah.
We want a lot of browning. It's happening.
So I'll just kind of turn them once and then let
them sit again.
And
maybe
turn
just
it down
turn it down a
little.
because, you know, as the heat builds up in the pan, you know, it could start to burn.
If you get a lot of browning on the bottom, stir pretty vigorously and the steam will dissolve it.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. You want to take it right to the edge of burning, but not burning. That's like caramel, right? It's like as far as you can go without burning it.
Okay, so we have some browning on the bottom.
So now I think we've got adequate browning that we can add the water for the second step of the cooking. Now it's going to make that fun noise and even more steam. And then sherry. Okay.
I love the smell.
Yeah. Scraping the bottom is a very important aspect. Turn it down and we're just going to cook it on a pretty low heat. I think like medium low.
Everything's kind of dissolving on the bottom and then getting absorbed by the onions.
We're going to add a couple of thyme sprigs, and most of the time, with time, the leaves will come off. So I don't bother taking the leaves off the stem. I just throw them in and I take the stems out later. Okay,
picking thyme is like one of the worst kitchen activities.
It's so annoying.
A waste of time.
It's like what people who are like interns have to sit there and pick thyme leaves for like 12 hours a day, and kind of annoying. So we want to be on low now.
Okay, so I'll turn it down to low.
And if this starts to look too dry, we just add a little bit more water, a quarter cup at a time. You have to use your judgment if they look like they're going to start burning, because you almost want a little bit of bubbling liquid in this at this point, almost like stewing them at this point. I'm just going to add a little more because I just think it needs more, because it creates this lovely thick juice. We're going to cook this on low for about 25-30 minutes. If it looks dry at any time, just add another quarter cup of water, just because we don't want it to be dry. We want it to be kind of almost a little saucy.
Okay, so we'll get this over there, and this is kind of hang out, and then we'll move on to tart assembly because we have the cooled onions swap.
When I roll on my counter, I just like to slightly moisten. You know, people say lightly flour, but it's really hard to do that. It just slides around. So my hand's wet, so throw some flour. A little more.
Okay.
Because then you can just go like this, and it nicely sticks to the counter. So that's the way I like to do it.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah. I always just
wet
it a little, because then you can really go with a nice thin film of flour.
Yeah.
And it really sticks.
What a great idea.
I can't believe I taught you something. Wow.
Oh my God. That's why you're here.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so do you want me to unwrap it?
If it was harder, you could just give it a couple whacks.
The wax.
Whack.
I'd like so much of the recipes on the channel are with pastry, and so it's like they've seen me. If anyone's watched the show, they see me like whacking it a lot.
I love to whack some dough. So I always start out doing both sides so that the underside is floured and the upper side, and then it always helps to whack it a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
because it, you see how it's actually spread, making the dough spread out.
Right.
So you're kind of like getting it started, not cracking.
I usually like let it get to about a half inch and then can start rolling. But it's soft enough to roll.
Yeah.
Should we switch?
You know what I might do if I see them starting to crack before I roll, I'll just push them together a little bit. Even though with the galette, I like it to look all cracked and rustic, so it doesn't really matter. But just so that, because any little crack is just going to get magnified as you roll. So.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And we're rolling kind of from the center out. I think people make the mistake of rolling back and forth a little too much rather than just taking strokes from the center out.
One thing that made sense to me when I heard it, like a long time ago when I was learning, is like pretend like you're pushing it away from you, not like pressing down.
And that's what I always tell people, especially if they're trying to maintain a shape, to push it where you want it to go.
Right.
So if you find that one part is not, staying in the shape that you want it, just push it away.
And that moving it around also helps with sticking.
Exactly. Every once in a while, I'll flour this side and flip it. So let's do that, because if you don't do that, these spots of butter can start to stick, because as you're rolling it out, you're exposing more of it to the surface. So that's why you have to always flip it and flour it lightly. You can't really overdo it. People say, "Oh, be careful about how much you."
There was like such fear mongering.
I know.
About like don't add too much flour, but it's like it's made of flour.
I know, it's made of flour, and you can just brush it off with your hand or a brush.
You're not gonna dry it out.
No. It's adding too much flour to the initial recipe that you would have to be careful about, and you really should use as much flour as you need to do this well.
Right.
I think it's like a 12-inch circle. You can go by the thickness. It's still too thick, so sort of in between. I never like to say it because I always say between a quarter and an eighth.
I was going to say, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, not 5/8.
It is always
is it 5/8 or 3/8? It's like so confusing.
It always is the perfect measurement, but you never want to say 3/8.
And who's getting out a ruler, right? Who's getting a ruler out?
I do get a ruler out.
You need like a caliper.
No, I get a ruler out, but I'm not going to expect like the average like baker at home to
So
do it.
I always just recommend that you pick it up and you can kind of feel when it's there. And it's like a little thinner than a 1/4 inch, I think is the best way to describe it. Because a 1/4 inch is like kind of thick and chunky. You don't really want that, but you don't want it too thin, and you can go by the size. I'm kind of curious to see what the recipe said. It probably says 12 or 13 inches.
And we're going for something round-ish, but it doesn't have to be
exactly. I mean, it depending on how
circle.
juicy your filling is. This one isn't too juicy, so if there's openings, breaches in the edge, it's not going to run all over the place. If you were doing berries, you would really want to make sure the edges were pretty good. So we are rolling this to slightly more than 1/8 of an inch. That's what I said, into a 14-inch circle. So I was close, and we're probably close.
Let's just double check.
And if you're working with the recipe, if it gives you a diameter, that's going to be the right thickness. You don't really have to worry. So that's 14, right?
Just about.
Yeah. So you can go by one or the other, the thickness, which is a little harder to gauge, or the size.
Right.
So, if it says 12-inch, get your ruler out and check it out.
Yeah, I think this is good.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So transfer it.
Yeah, I like to do the roll it up, roll it off.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Totally.
And people get afraid of moving dough. Moving dough, I never do the fold it in quarters, because then you could crack it.
Yeah, I think folding it weakens it.
This is super fun.
Totally.
If you wanted to come back to this later, you could chill this for a little while. If your kid starts screaming, or you need to walk the dog, or someone calls you on the phone or something, you could just put this in the fridge, but we're not going to do that.
All right, so we can bring everything else over?
Yeah, we can bring everything over.
Okay.
We're going to crumble the goat cheese. Do you want to do it, or should we both do it?
You go for it.
All right. And this just gives a really nice, creamy layer. If you don't like goat cheese, you could use ricotta or something else, but I love goat cheese, and I don't think it's strong. This kind of goat cheese is so mild.
Yeah, the fresh is mild.
And when it melts underneath, it's just creating like this creamy, very tasty layer.
That looks so good.
And then we're going to spread the caramelized onions.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about some mandolin safety after this. So we're going to leave like about a 1.5 inch border all around. And this seems like a lot of onions, but once you get them on here, you'll see that we probably use most of them. And if you feel like it's too much, just save some for your omelet or your burger or whatever. These are great to have on hand. They freeze really well.
Should I start slicing?
Yes.
Okay. What am I going for as far as thickness?
Pretty thin, like paper thin.
Paper thin. This is actually for opening oysters.
Yeah.
But I'm using it for the mandolin. And actually, this mandolin's not that sharp, but I'm still using it just in case.
They're going to take too long to cook if they're too thick.
Right.
So it's super important for this recipe, because it only is going to bake for, I think, about 40 minutes or so.
Yeah.
That it's thin enough to cook in that time. So
even thinner?
I would go thinner, like paper thin, yeah. One more thinner. And then the glove, I have one at home that is great. It's like a mesh glove that's very fitted, not chainmail, like that one.
Yeah.
And after a couple of not only bad cuts that I've gotten on a mandolin, but I've seen friends hosting guests with a bandaged hand. Mandolins are great, but you really, really have to be careful. I get nervous when I see people on TV or on videos like using the mandolin. Like,
I mean, I think it's number one kitchen.
It probably is.
Injury
it's a really sharp blade.
I think the second one is hand blender.
Oh.
But you can imagine how that happens.
I don't want to talk about it. But
okay.
So yeah, these are good. These are great.
Okay.
I put a glove on every single time I do this, because I don't like cutting.
So many horror stories.
And then having a Band-Aid on my finger for 2 weeks.
But they're not horror stories from like lack of experience.
No,
or like it just can happen to anyone at any time.
It really could.
Yeah.
Because they look kind of innocent. But
Right.
that thing is sharp, let me tell you. We're just going to toss the potatoes in some olive oil, I think salt and pepper, just to kind of season them, and that's so they're not too dry.
Quantity-wise, is that good?
Yeah, that's probably a little too much.
Okay,
but
we don't have to use it all.
No.
Okay.
So we're just going to put a little oil.
There's some salt. Pepper?
Yeah, why not? I don't even know if the recipe definitely has it, but let's
why not?
Yeah. So this is just so they'll cook properly and not dry out.
They can fry a little more rather and brown rather than dehydrate.
Exactly.
We're preheating the oven to 400.
Oh, yeah, 400. So we're going to put these potatoes on top. Just so that we still see the onions, we're going to tuck them in a bit.
You're not like arranging them
in
like a
we're
rosette.
not arranging. You could. Look, some people are going to no matter what you say, right? Yeah, that's good. That's enough.
Okay, that's enough.
Because we don't want them to not cook. So.
Right. Beautiful.
All right, so now Gruyère.
Gruyère. Okay, so this is 3 ounces of grated Gruyère.
And I kind of think you really have to use Gruyère for this, for the flavor. I think you want to use like an Emmentaler Gruyère, something like that, because it just gives it, again, that sort of French onion soup flavor, which is what we... Oh, yeah, this is looking good. Did this come from the garden?
From the garden.
Yay. So that's actually, I think, enough, right? It looks good.
Yeah, that's good. And then a little pepper?
Sure. It's going to be a little peppery, but that's okay. Oh, yeah. So now we are going to fold it over.
Okay.
And this is another thing. I've had editors read a recipe and say, you mean you're completely enclosing the dough? Like, so you have to be so careful about how you say this.
Yeah, I had my editor for the first 2 books flag the same thing, and it was like, I added the language like leaving an opening in the center.
Exactly.
So that you're not,
but people, when you say fold the dough over the filling, they're like, well, you mean completely?
like a turnover or something.
And it's obvious once you're looking at it that you're only doing this. Now, sometimes you can use the paper, right?
Yeah.
To get this going. Because you might be like, oh, how am I going to pick this up?
And you just let it fold wherever it wants to.
Yeah, I just do it. Again, I don't do like a little accordion or anything like that. Right. And then this part too, I always kind of use my hands to just push it all down a little bit. And now it's pretty soft. You could chill it now if you wanted to before you baked it, which would probably be a best practice. But you could also just go straight to the oven, which is what we're going to do. You'll see the potatoes more after it bakes.
The cheese will melt down.
And this is just so it doesn't sort of flop open. So into the oven.
Yep.
You want to do it? I'll open it for you.
Okay.
You want to be in the middle or the bottom at 400 for 40 to 45 minutes. If you put it on the top rack, the top might cook before the pastry cooks, and so you really want bottom heat when you're doing a tart to really get that pastry cooked through. You should see some bubbling with this. So bubbling, brown, smelling very, very good.
All right, so we'll check it after 40. It smells so good, and it looks amazing. So that was about 45.
I like to err on the long side. I mean, you can tell it's pretty dark on the bottom, but we want that.
Right.
Then it makes sure that the pastry is cooked through. Parchment paper should be strong enough to pick up.
You know what I learned recently? I think I kind of intuitively knew this, but I learned for real that there's like different thicknesses of parchment paper.
That's true. And then different brands. But I could actually tell that was going to like bend the galette because it's so heavy. But I'm just going to slide it on there.
There you go.
Sometimes I like to serve it on the parchment because I think it looks really nice. But you can also just do like a tablecloth trick and just pull it out.
Nice. So we're ready to slice?
You do the honors.
Okay.
Ooh, the cheese made a little bit of a crust there.
Yum.
When I've done it before, the Gruyère that I use sort of melted into the potatoes more, but every cheese is a little different.
Right.
This one stayed on top more.
And I can tell the way that the knife goes through it, that like
crispy.
The bottom is really well done. And it's also like cutting really nicely through the onions and the potato as well. So you're going to get a beautiful sharp slice.
Normally I wouldn't put my knife on a platter, but it's just what we have.
It's been through worse.
And it stays together quite well. We just took this out of the oven.
Yeah, so it's still pretty hot.
You can slice this right away. You can serve it warm, room temperature.
All right, there's no egg in it for it to have to set or anything like that.
No. It's very, oh wow. You can really see the layers where it folds over.
And that beautiful deep golden brown on the bottom.
Yeah. That's what we want.
And it's like the same color there as it is in the middle.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You want it cooked like that. See,
gosh.
I would normally start back here. That's
You start on that end?
Sometimes.
This smells so good. And also it's lunchtime, so it works out perfectly.
Big bite.
I really like the combo of the goat with the Gruyere because it gives you very different things, but it goes together really well. Nicely seasoned also. Like it doesn't need salt.
The amount of salt in the recipe is exactly right.
Right.
If any more, it would be salty.
But that's a hard thing to achieve as a recipe developer. Is like you don't have to. There's no part where it's like, oh, seasoned to taste or something.
No.
This would be great as squares, as like a little cocktail hors d'oeuvre.
So we didn't just take the one fake bite to pretend that we were eating it. We're actually eating it.
I never pretend. I never once pretended on this show to eat something. Maybe once.
So good. And the pepper, I like the pepperiness too.
I also really love how the thyme kind of like fries in the fat of the cheese. I love the onion soup flavor, but like the acidity of the goat cheese, the sort of like eatability of like being able to pick it up and like the flaky pastry is so good. Really perfect as like a fall lunch or dinner.
Or winter.
Yeah. And I love savory baking. That's like totally my wheelhouse. So it's a great one. So check out this recipe and more in Susan's book, Veg Forward. And you want to tell people where they can find you?
Sure, on Instagram at Susan Spungen or on Substack at Susanality.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me,
It was a pleasure to have
Claire.
you. And thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe.